You see Ben Affleck right there, pursuing an off-screen passion, ending the violence, bringing real development to the long-suffering people of the eastern Congo in Africa. That war flared again this week, with rebels taking over much of the country. And Ben Affleck is here with us today, along with Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington, ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. And Ben, thanks for coming in. You've been working in the eastern Congo for many, many years. And one of the things we saw this week was rebels sort of marching through the country. What are you hearing from your people on the ground?
Well, I mean, one of the things we're hearing from our people there is that the schools that we fund, people are hiding out in. The hospitals are completely overwhelmed. They're offering free care for war victims. A shell just hit a camp and paralyzed a 5-year-old boy from the neck down. So you're hearing all kinds of brutal, terrible stuff that you hear about.
And this war has already taken millions, the lives of millions over
Indeed. So this great war since 96 and then 98, conservative estimates are that 3 million people have died, which is a hard number to imagine. I mean, you can imagine if this was happening in Western Europe, it would be, a galactic event that people would be paying a lot of attention to, but it's in Central East Africa where it's hard to get to, and I think where people feel it's somewhat removed from our life and our
Earlier this week, you sent out a tweet urging the U.S. to insist on a ceasefire. What more can the U.S. do right now that we're not doing?
There's a huge amount that the U.S. can do, frankly. I mean, we have a lot of levers there. We can engage in the kind of high-level shuttle diplomacy that you saw be so effective in Gaza. Ambassador Rice, our representative to the United Nations. The United Nations manages a 17,000 peacekeeper agency called MONUSCO, which we're on the hook for $400 million of their $1 billion plus. We can engage in Kagame and Museveni and Kabila in a high enough level way that they really pay attention.
Congressman, why isn't that happening?
Well, we have a lot of influence in the region. I just want to emphasize that we are in a position to make a difference there. We have built relationships with Uganda, Rwanda, Ethiopia, Kenya, a lot of it around Somalia, Al-Shabaab, Lord's Resistance Army coming out of Uganda. We have influence in the region with key players. We need to get there in that type of high-level capacity. And I think it isn't happening at the moment because the attention is elsewhere. It's Gaza, it's Libya. But look, it's all tied together in Africa. The instability in countries in Africa, the lack of governance that's in the eastern Congo leads to instability and leads to the type of problems that we're going to have to deal with. It's in our interest to get in there, broker a peace deal.
One of the other things we've seen there is you talk about the UN peacekeeping mission, 17,000 troops there, but their mandate is to protect civilians, not to engage the rebels. And you have the scenes this week of them standing by as the rebels march through the country.
They can't enforce peace.
Yeah, they opted to sidestep this conflict. They're quite controversial there. In fact, they're quite unpopular in Congo largely.
They've been accused of abuse.
As impotent, and there are some issues of abuse. But I think with the United States, when we had issues that were important to us, we sent John Kerry to Sudan. We sent Bill Richardson. We sent, I think it was North Korea, General Powell, folks like that. That's a level of engagement that I think we need to step up to. This, what we're seeing here, this rebel group taking a city of 1 million people, carving this area into fiefdoms, kind of imposing terror there, precipitated in the past exactly what we saw that cost 3 million lives in conflict-related.
And we have to be engaged in a sustained way. We've actually been involved there. U.S. military trained a Congolese battalion that has proven very effective, but it was just one battalion. We need to be in there. It's all about security forces. They don't have the security forces in that region, so rebels from all manner of different places prey on the population. If we could work actively to train security forces, bring stability, the rule of law, it can make an enormous difference.
It's interesting to say that quickly, anecdotally. We had some of our people from ECI lost their car in a ditch, which happens frequently, and the Army guys pulled up, and they thought, to help get them out, and they thought, here we go, it's going to be bribery, it's going to be a whole issue. They brought the car out, they waved goodbye, they said, no problem. Turned out that was the unit that the United States, we've trained one unit of their Army. So this progress is possible. And as you know, I mean, this country was the subject of the single piece of legislation that Barack Obama sponsored while he was in the U.S. Senate. He's not unaware of this, and I appreciate all the other things that he's doing, but this has to be a priority.
There is also more that the private sector being doing. Congo is a wealthy country in so many ways. Lots of critical minerals come from there. U.S. companies are supposed to ensure that those minerals aren't coming from rebel-held areas. Is that working?
It's not working as well as it should, but at least gives us a chance to get beyond the sort of underground economy to a legitimate economy. And that's the biggest point. This is a region of the world that is resource-rich, economically critical, a huge opportunity for the United States and for United States businesses to do business, to open up trade opportunities. China is very actively engaged in that region. Now, they're actively engaged in a very mercenary way. They pay whoever they have to pay to get the minerals out. If we could bring greater stability, there's a huge economic opportunity for us to take advantage advantage of for our benefit as well as for the benefit of the people in Africa.
And it also creates the conditions for sustainable development, which is what you've been trying to work on with your initiative, trying to grow more cocoa and other crops that can actually help the people on the ground. But is that possible under these conditions right now?
Well, I tell you, we still have people, as you mentioned, we still have our farmers growing cocoa. I mean, the amazing thing about the Congolese people is their degree of resilience and that they've been through this kind of stuff in the past. And so they're still dedicated and working hard. And we've seen our schools still open, the hospitals, and so on. But naturally, it's an impediment to growth. And I think one of the dangers is that you solve this particular issue of this revolutionary group. And I think this tends to happen in the international community. Okay, that's dealt with. Really, the systemic issue here is security sector reform. And that's something that the United States can really have an impact on, largely through diplomacy. We don't have to spend a lot of money to lean on the Congolese government to say, you've got to pay your soldiers, you've got to develop a culture of soldiering where these units are protecting the civilians rather than being predators. And that's the kind of thing that we need to get to, and it's possible.
No, we heard the roundtable talking about the president's second-term agenda. You're saying that this is something else for his second term.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think this is critical to, people talk about, what these issues are from a national security point of view, from an economic point of view. I think our actions in foreign policy, and maybe I'm naive, represent our values and represent who we are. And if any American were to go to that country and stand and see what was happening there, they would insist that we do what we could.
It's a huge humanitarian crisis. Huge humanitarian crisis that we're in a position to do something about.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
And now we honor our fellow Americans who serve and sacrifice. This week, the Pentagon released the names of 3 soldiers and Marines killed in Afghanistan.